When we talk about organic chemistry, we're mainly talking about the chemistry of compounds that are going to contain the element carbon. Now, of the 110 plus elements on the entire periodic table, organic chemistry focuses on a very narrow band of elements or group of elements, again headlined by the element carbon. Other ones that we typically find in this branch of chemistry are hydrogen, oxygen, and sometimes nitrogen, phosphorus, and sulfur. And oftentimes organic chemistry is involving those elements which are elements that are essential to life. And at one time it was thought that organic compounds were only able to be made by living organisms. Now, in this age of sophisticated laboratory techniques and synthesis procedures, we know today that it is possible to artificially synthesize organic compounds, and that's where we get a lot of advances in biotechnology and pharmaceuticals. Organic molecules that were used as medicines and still are used as medicines were only at one time available from natural sources, trees, roots, certain animals. But now scientists are able to synthesize those artificially in a laboratory setting, usually much easier and for much less cost. So when we think about organic chemistry, it's all around us. Literally everything that is derived from a living organism is considered part of organic chemistry. Plastics that are around you are part of organic chemistry. Of all the known compounds, most of them are organic, and so we're talking into the millions. Ethanol, grain alcohol, there's lots of different types of alcohols, but the one type that our body is able to metabolize and handle is the kind that we find in beverages, and that is ethanol. Ethylene glycol is another organic compound, and that's usually what's found in automobile antifreeze. Can be very toxic to living organisms, but it's at the same time it's sweet tasting, which is why if you're walking your dog and you see a puddle of bright green liquid that's antifreeze, you want to keep them away from it because they like the taste of it, but yet it can be very toxic if not lethal to them. Acetone is another organic compound, a specific class known as a ketone. It is a member of, and it's found in nail polish remover. It has a very distinctive odor to it, as do many organic substances. And again, your plastics, your polymers, rayon, nylon, typically found in clothing, but anything that you find from the pencil that you hold in your hand, the mechanical pencil you hold in your hand, to the plastic frame of your computer screen or your laptop, anything that's plastic is derived ultimately, most likely, from crude oil, which is a fossil fuel, and those fossil fuels came ultimately from dead organic matter, prehistoric matter. Why carbon? What's so special about element number 6 on the periodic table that it gets virtually its own complete field of chemistry? And it's because carbon has several unique features, features which it does share with a couple of other elements on the periodic table, but not very many at all. And the first is that it has the ability to bond to other carbon atoms in order to form long chains. It can be short or long chains, but it can also wrap around on itself the ends of those chains, and they can link together to form ring-based structures. So for as many carbons as you can link end to end, you can basically have double that amount in terms of number of compounds, because then you can take the ends of those chains and link them to each other to form a ring structure. The other unique feature that carbon has is what's called tetravalence. And what that refers to is carbon's ability to form 4 bonds, whether those bonds are to other carbon atoms or if it's forming bonds to other elements of interest in organic chemistry, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, sulfur. And the reason that it has this tetravalence can be easily explained if we look back at the electron configuration of carbon and also its Lewis electron dot diagram, remembering that carbon is going to undergo promotion because that increases the stability of its s and p orbitals, and also the fact that it increases the bonding capacity from 2 to 4. And the more bonding capacity that an element has, usually the more stable it becomes. When we talk about organic molecules, we start with usually the simplest of the organic molecules, which are known as hydrocarbons. And these are the molecules that only consist of hydrogen and carbon, as the name would seem to indicate. One way that we can classify these is by classifying them as either aromatic or aliphatic. Now, aromatic hydrocarbons are ones that contain one or more benzene rings. And benzene is itself an organic molecule, consists of 6 carbon atoms linked together in a ring structure. And those 6 carbons are linked by alternating double bonds and single bonds. So you start with a carbon, you have a double bond, single bond, double bond, single bond, double bond, single bond, and then you're back at your first carbon again, and it's a cycle, so it just keeps going around. That alternating of the double bonds and single bonds evenly spaces out those pi electrons and thus makes a benzene structure particularly stable, and it has its own unique chemistry associated with it. So compounds that contain benzene rings behave in a certain way. Aliphatic hydrocarbons are simply organic molecules that do not contain those benzene rings, and so they would behave in a separate manner.